Alright. Welcome back to the channel for episode number 2. My name is Denny, and today we're going to have a look at something I never thought of before, something that nobody talks about, neither on YouTube or in film school. It's a little trick that will make your cinematography way better. For some people, it can be something quite subtle, but that's exactly what we should aim for as cinematographers, because we should ask ourselves, how can I make my frame at least 1% better? Those little touches in your frames, those little 1% here and there, makes a huge difference. It's actually what is going to differentiate you from the others. Because the average person will just do the work they're supposed to do, as they usually do, without trying to reach further. The average person doesn't want to work a little bit more for just 1%. 1%? Come on, be serious. I prefer staying here, I'm warm, I have a nice cup of coffee. Why should I go back to the track for 1% better? I know I'll get my paycheck either way, so why bother? Well, I don't want to be like that kind of person. Every time I can make just 1% better, I'll do it. And if you think the same, then you can subscribe to this channel if you haven't, and together we'll add up some 1% in each episode. Alright, before going into the little trick that I want to share with you, we should talk about an important approach for lighting. As you probably know, the key to realistic lighting is motivated light, which means you want the viewer to know or to understand where the light comes from. You don't want light coming from nowhere without any reference. The lighting has to make sense in the story, based on what people can see, or even better, imagine. Let's take this scene from La La Land, for example. If you start a new scene with this shot of Emma Stone, people will be like, wait, is this Shrek? Did I go see the wrong movie? Why is she green? And just like that, you're out of the story. But if you start the scene with a wide shot that shows you the context, all of a sudden, it makes sense. Simply because you can imagine there's like a green neon outside from a bar or something. Quite similar to the movie Vertigo. So coming from the wide, the close-up shot makes more sense now, and it keeps you in the story. Or you can even establish this look in a previous scene, and then later in the film, you could start directly on a close-up shot, simply because we know how this room looks like. We've seen it before. Another example, with this simple setup of myself. The lighting on my face is motivated by the practical lamp just behind me. In real life, the lights from this lamp would never reach my face. Never! But in movies, this light is just enough to make the viewer think that it does. Even here, the light from this window is not really lighting me, but it serves as a motivation for the light that I have just in front of me. So, try to always motivate your light to give it meaning, to take part in the scene. Now that we have this in mind, where do I want to go with it? Well, I was having a look at some frames from one of my favorite cinematographers. You know which name I'm going to say, right? Roger Deakins. So, I'm looking at frames from some movies he worked on when I stopped at this one, from the movie Prisoners. Incredible movie, in my opinion. I stopped wondering, why do I find this frame beautiful and so natural? It seems so simple, right? Just one key light, frame right, motivated by a window, which we can see on this shot, actually, which gives us context by showing us where the light comes from. There's surely a negative feel on the other side in order to create this contrast. You can't have that kind of darkness in real life without something blocking the light from bouncing. It's quite a simple setup, so what is it about it that makes me feel in the room with Jake Gyllenhaal? Then, I suddenly got it. The scene seems so realistic because it simply doesn't seem lit. That's why Roger Deakins is so good. Because his lighting seems natural as it will look on real life, but better. Looking at this shot here, you'll never guess there's a big light outside the window. Simply because there's way less level on his face. If you compare it with the source that's supposed to light him, which is the light from the window we can't see, which will be the same level as this one. I mean, of course, it makes perfectly sense, right? But somehow, I found that people, myself included, don't think about it. In real life, you can never be as bright as the light that's lighting you. It never happens. At least, if you live in the same universe as me, with the same laws of physics. Imagine his face had 2 more stops. The scene wouldn't look at all realistic. In our subconscious, we wouldn't buy it. Our body Jake would look lit by a lamp. If we look at false color, we clearly see what I'm talking about. Face is a little less than 2 stops under the daylight coming from the window. It looks so natural. So, let's take it to the test, which usually means let's make a mess out of my apartment. So I took my camera, set next to a window with another window just behind, just as Jake is. So this is all natural light, and my goal is to simply augment it. So I set my exposure for the thing that I can't control, which means the window. Next, I exposed my face. I took the Nanlite FC500B with a spotlight at like 8%, bouncing from this white muslin, which gives me a soft key light. As you can see, it's a big mess. I told you. Then, I used some black fabric to stop the light from spilling into the wall behind me, and a black floppy to create the contrast for the dark side of my face, which gave me something quite close in terms of exposure levels. If we compare both false color, you can see it. Now, let's keep the same levels on the face, but let's make the light from the window darker. We'll go from 500 ISO to 100, and then we increase the light power to maintain the exposure level on the face just right. And ta-da! I guess we all agree, I look lit. I look like there's a big light next to me, which don't feel real at all. In real life, this could never happen, just with the light coming from the window. By looking at a comparison from both versions, it proves the importance of this little trick. In fact, I kept looking at other frames, and every time it's the same exposure trick. The light that gives motivation to the scene is brighter than the exposure of the subject. Once again, it makes perfect sense. Here, the light is motivated by this practical, which is way brighter than Wolverine's face, by almost, I'd say, 3 stops. Same here with the window light and the exposure of old Jack Sparrow. No Country for Young Men, exact same technique. Blade Runner, you can see it again, right? Sicario. Just for a second, imagine her face was brighter, exposed at the value that a face is supposed to be exposed at. It would make 0 sense. It would totally look like crap. Same, every time the key light is motivated and brighter. Again on our friend Javier. Revolutionary Road, face under the light from the window. Skyfall, you got it. So, it's a really simple trick to know that can totally change a scene and make it believable. I mean, sometimes it's really subtle, you can't see it, but you can certainly feel it. So, what all of this implies? It implies that the face of the actor shouldn't always be perfectly exposed. You should expose it for the mood you try to convey in the story. And that's something I never learned in film school, or neither here on YouTube. The TV show Mindhunter by David Fincher is the perfect example for it. Actually, it's a true masterclass. See how dark the actor is? It looks just perfect for the mood of the show. It looks so natural. The light isn't perfect, but it's this imperfectness that makes the beauty of it. And I guess that's what I'll be looking from now on, imperfections. Because that's what makes a frame natural. Next frame. Look at that, so beautiful. Let's take it to false color to see what we're talking about. Yep, the face exposure is like 2 steps under the proper exposure for skin tones. If we would raise the exposure at where skin tones should be, it would look something like that. See how the mood is not the same anymore? This means that exposure is a tool that serves the story. We should expose for the mood we want and not trying to have perfect exposure every time. To conclude this episode, here's the 5 steps to a good looking shot, based on what we just talked. 1. Choose a clever angle for your coverage. Don't compete with the sun unless you got the budget to do it. Don't shoot against a flat wall. Try to have maximum depth layers. Expose for the thing you don't have control over, for example the sky or a window. Motivate the light with a little practical or by showing a little bit of a window. Expose the subject at a level that makes sense, based on the source that motivates your light. And the last one, what can I do to make this 1% better? If you follow those steps, I'll guarantee you that you end up with a pretty good looking frame. So that's it for this episode. Let me know if it was helpful, and if it was, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, to like, and to tell me what you think about it in the comment sections. Those interactions help the channel grow faster. So yeah, that's it for today, and I'll see you in the next episode. Ciao!